Michael came home late, exhausted from work, expecting nothing more than a quiet dinner and some rest. As he dropped his keys onto the table, Jennifer was already standing there, arms crossed, an odd smirk on her lips. "I'm going on a date tonight," she said casually, as if announcing she was stepping out for groceries. Michael froze, his brain struggling to process the words. "Excuse me? A date," she repeated. "With Brian from work." Silence filled the room, stretching unbearably. He could hear the faint hum of the fridge, the distant sound of cars passing outside. He blinked, still unsure if he had misheard her, but Jennifer was watching him expectantly, as if daring him to react. "You're joking," he finally said, his voice tight. She shook her head. "No, I'm not. I think it's time I start seeing other people." His exhaustion was gone, replaced by a surge of anger so sudden it made his hands shake. "Seeing other people?" He let out a bitter laugh. "You mean cheating?" Jennifer sighed, as if he was the one being unreasonable. "It's not cheating if I'm honest about it, Michael. Besides, our marriage has been dull for a while now, don't you think?" His jaw clenched. Dull? Since when? He had worked his ass off to provide for them, to make sure they had a good life. He had never even considered looking at another woman. And now, she stood before him, smug, acting as if this was some casual, normal conversation. "So you just decided, without even talking to me, that our marriage is open?" he growled. "It's not really a decision." She shrugged. "It's just happening." Michael stared at her, at the way she spoke, like she had already moved on, like he was just some obstacle to her new, exciting life. His pulse pounded in his ears. He wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her understand just how much she had betrayed him. But suddenly, an idea crept into his mind, cold, calculated, and much more satisfying than rage. "If you're going on a date," he said slowly, "then I'm coming with you." Jennifer's confident expression faltered. "What?" Michael stepped closer, his anger now controlled, almost calm. "You said you want to date? Fine. But I want to see exactly what that looks like. So I'll be joining you and Brian tonight." For the first time in this entire conversation, Jennifer looked uneasy. And that, Michael thought darkly, was only the beginning. Jennifer blinked, her confident smirk slipping for the first time. "You can't be serious." Michael folded his arms, standing his ground. "Oh, I'm dead serious. You said you're going on a date. Fine. But I want to be there. I want to see exactly what kind of man you're throwing 10 years of marriage away for." She scoffed, shaking her head like he was being ridiculous. "That's not how this works, Michael." "Oh? And how does this work, Jennifer?" His voice dripped with venom. "You get to waltz out of here, betray me right to my face, and I'm just supposed to sit at home like some pathetic idiot, waiting for you to come back?" She crossed her arms, her frustration growing. "I told you the truth. Isn't that better than sneaking around behind your back? I was honest with you." Michael let out a sharp laugh. "Honest? You think honesty makes this okay? You stood in our home and told me, to my face, that you're going on a date like it's the most normal thing in the world. You expected me to just, what? Wish you luck?" Jennifer rolled her eyes. "I expected you to be mature about it." Something inside him snapped. "Mature? You want to talk about maturity? You're the one acting like a selfish, entitled." He stopped himself, exhaling sharply, trying to keep control. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. Jennifer's confidence started to return as she noticed his struggle to keep his composure. "Look, I know you're upset," she said, her voice softer now, almost condescending. "But fighting about it won't change anything. I've made up my mind. I need this, Michael. I need excitement." Michael clenched his jaw so hard it hurt. "Excitement," he repeated, his voice low. "And you thought telling me like this would be what? Easier? More thrilling? I thought you'd at least try to understand." That was it. That was the moment he realized just how far gone she was. She truly believed she had done nothing wrong. Michael took a slow breath, forcing his anger down, shaping it into something sharper, something strategic. Fine, he said, his voice suddenly calm. Jennifer narrowed her eyes. Fine? He nodded. Yes. Fine. You want to go on a date? Go ahead. But I'm coming with you. Jennifer let out a frustrated laugh. Michael, you're being insane. He tilted his head, watching her closely. Am I? You claim you're being honest, that you're not doing anything wrong. So why does the idea of me being there bother you? If this is all so innocent, you should have no problem with it. Jennifer hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough for Michael to know he had her. I'll pick out something nice, he added, walking past her toward the bedroom. If we're doing this, we might as well make it a night to remember. Jennifer didn't say anything as he left the room. But he knew she was standing there, finally realizing that this wasn't going to go the way she had planned. And that was exactly what he wanted. Michael stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his collar. He had chosen a sharp navy blue dress shirt, one that fit him just right, confident, composed. If Jennifer thought she could humiliate him, she was in for a surprise. Behind him, she leaned against the door frame, arms crossed, watching him with narrowed eyes. I still can't believe you're actually doing this, she muttered. Michael met her gaze in the reflection, his expression unreadable. Why? You said it's not cheating if you're honest, right? I'm just making sure we all stay honest. Jennifer exhaled sharply, clearly irritated. This isn't how it was supposed to go. Oh? And how was it supposed to go? He turned to face her fully. You thought you'd drop that little bombshell on me, walk out the door, and I'd just sit here, miserable and heartbroken? She didn't answer. Michael stepped closer, lowering his voice. You wanted me to feel powerless, Jen. You wanted me to watch you leave and wonder what you were doing, who you were with, and why I wasn't enough anymore. But that's not going to happen. She crossed her arms tighter. And what exactly do you think this will prove? A smirk ghosted over his lips. That you're not as sure about this as you pretend to be. Jennifer's jaw clenched. Michael grabbed his watch from the dresser, strapping it on. What time does Brian get there? 7:30, she said through gritted teeth. Perfect, he said smoothly, grabbing his keys. Let's not keep him waiting. Jennifer sighed, rubbing her temples as if she were dealing with a child throwing a tantrum. But Michael could see it now. Beneath her frustration, beneath her act, there was something else. Uncertainty. And he planned to make sure that uncertainty only grew. When they arrived at the restaurant, Brian was already seated at a small, candlelit table near the window. He looked up when he saw Jennifer walking toward him, his eager smile quickly fading when he noticed Michael right behind her. Michael enjoyed that moment. The flicker of confusion, the awkward shift in his seat. Hey, Brian, Michael said casually, pulling out a chair for himself before Brian could even speak. Hope you don't mind, but I thought I'd join you two tonight. Brian's eyes darted between them. I didn't realize. Oh, don't worry. Michael interrupted smoothly. Jen and I have always shared everything. He shot her a glance, his smirk growing as her jaw tightened. Jennifer sat down across from him, shooting him a glare that could kill. But Michael wasn't backing down. If she wanted to play games, fine. But she'd soon realize he was better at them than she was. Brian shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. So, Michael, he started, forcing an awkward chuckle. I wasn't expecting you to join us tonight. Michael leaned back in his chair, casually draping an arm over the backrest. Yeah, I got that impression, he said smoothly. But you know, since Jennifer and I have been together for 10 years, I figured it'd be nice to see what's so special about her new friend. Jennifer exhaled sharply, clearly trying to keep her composure. Michael, don't do this. Do what? He tilted his head, feigning innocence. I'm just here to learn. You said you wanted excitement, right? So, let's see what excitement looks like. Brian cleared his throat, shifting his gaze to Jennifer as if silently asking what the hell was going on. She avoided his eyes, instead picking up her menu and flipping through it aggressively. The tension at the table was suffocating. "So, Brian," Michael continued, ignoring Jennifer's silent rage, "tell me, what do you do for fun? Besides, you know this." Brian forced a smile, clearly unsure how to navigate this disaster of a date. Well, I like hiking. And sports. I play in a weekend basketball league." Michael nodded thoughtfully. Nice. Jen, you hate hiking, don't you?" Jennifer slammed her menu shut. "Michael." He smiled. "What?" "I'm just trying to get to know the guy. Maybe you've changed. Maybe now you love hiking." He turned to Brian. "Did she tell you she refuses to go anywhere that doesn't have air conditioning?" Brian chuckled awkwardly. No, she didn't mention that." Jennifer shot him a look that instantly killed his amusement. Michael leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "It's funny, you know? You spend a decade with someone, thinking you know everything about them. Then one day, she tells you she's going on a date with someone else. Just like that." Jennifer's grip tightened around her napkin. "I told you, I was being honest with you." "Oh, you were so honest," Michael agreed mockingly. "You just forgot one tiny detail. You didn't actually give a damn about how I'd feel." The silence was unbearable. Brian looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. Brian cleared his throat again. "Maybe we should just enjoy dinner? No need for any drama." Michael let out a slow chuckle. "Oh, Brian," he said, shaking his head. "You walked into a 5-course meal of drama the second you agreed to this little dinner." Jennifer slammed her hands onto the table. Enough. Heads turned from other tables, but she didn't care. She was furious. Michael, however, was calm, too calm. He took a sip of his water, savoring the fact that for the first time tonight, she was the one losing control. And he was just getting started. Jennifer's outburst left a heavy silence lingering over the table. A few nearby diners glanced over before awkwardly turning back to their meals. Brian cleared his throat, shifting in his seat. Maybe this wasn't the best idea." Michael smirked. "Oh, come on, Brian. Don't back out now. This is exactly what Jennifer wanted, right?" He turned to his wife, his voice dangerously smooth. "You were so eager to be honest with me, so let's keep things honest." Jennifer's hands curled into fists on the table. "You're being ridiculous." "Am I?" Michael arched a brow. "You wanted to go on a date. You told me, to my face, that our marriage wasn't enough for you anymore. And you expected me to just accept that?" Jennifer didn't respond. She was fuming, her jaw tight, her nails digging into her palms. Michael leaned back in his chair, exuding a calm confidence that only infuriated her more. "See, what's funny to me, Jen, is how you acted like this was your decision alone. Like I didn't have a say in it. Like I was supposed to just sit back while you played house with Brian over here." Brian put his hands up defensively. "Look, man, I didn't mean to cause any trouble." Michael cut him off with a sharp laugh. "Oh, Brian. You thought this would be easy, didn't you? That you'd swoop in, take another man's wife, and there'd be no consequences?" Brian opened his mouth, then closed it, clearly struggling for words. Jennifer slammed her napkin onto the table. "That's enough, Michael." Michael turned to her, his smirk fading, his voice dropping to something colder. "No, Jen. You don't get to decide when it's enough. You don't get to rewrite the rules in the middle of the game just because you're losing." Jennifer's face twisted in frustration. "I'm not losing." Michael chuckled darkly. "Aren't you?" He gestured toward Brian, who looked like he wanted nothing more than to vanish into thin air. "Your date here is already regretting this whole thing." Brian swallowed hard. "Look, I didn't realize." Michael leaned in, his eyes locking onto Brian's. "Didn't realize what? That you were getting involved with a married woman? That this wouldn't be some casual little fling? Or did you not realize just how much she had to lose?" Jennifer shot Brian a desperate look. Brian, don't listen to him. He's just trying to manipulate you. Am I? Michael cut in smoothly. Or am I just forcing you to face reality? Brian hesitated. He glanced at Jennifer, then back at Michael, and something in his face shifted. Doubt. Hesitation. The confidence he had at the start of the evening was gone. Michael saw it. And so did Jennifer. For the first time since this whole charade started, she was the one panicking. Michael leaned back, satisfied. So, Brian? Still think this was a good idea? Brian exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. I think I should go. Jennifer's eyes widened. Brian, wait. But it was too late. Brian was already standing up, pulling out his wallet to leave some cash on the table. Look, Jennifer, I don't think this is gonna work. I didn't sign up for this kind of drama. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Jennifer sitting there, humiliated. Michael picked up his water glass and took a slow sip, watching as her expression flickered between anger, disbelief, and something else, something dangerously close to regret. Well, he said, setting his glass down with a smirk. That was fun. Jennifer clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. But Michael wasn't done yet. Not even close. Jennifer sat frozen, staring at the empty seat where Brian had been just moments ago. Her fingers curled around the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Michael could see the frustration boiling inside her, but he also saw something else, something she was desperately trying to hide. Doubt. Regret. Good. Michael leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Well, that didn't go quite how you planned, did it? Jennifer shot him a glare, but there was less fire behind it now. You ruined this. Michael laughed under his breath, shaking his head. I ruined this? No, Jennifer. You ruined this the moment you decided to throw away our marriage like it was nothing. I just made sure you got a front row seat to your own disaster. Her nostrils flared. You just couldn't handle the fact that I wanted something more, could you? Michael tilted his head. Something more? He let the words hang between them. Tell me, Jen, does this feel like more? Watching your date run out of here like a scared little boy. She looked away, her jaw tightening. Michael smirked. I'll take that as a no. The waiter approached hesitantly, clearly sensing the tension. Would you still like to order? Jennifer exhaled sharply, grabbing her purse. No. We're leaving. Michael raised an eyebrow. Oh? No appetite anymore? She shot him another glare before pushing back her chair and storming toward the exit. Michael took his time, standing slowly and buttoning his jacket before following her out. Once they stepped outside, the crisp night air hit them, but it did nothing to cool Jennifer's anger. She whirled on him, her eyes blazing. What the hell was your goal here, Michael? He shrugged. I don't know. Maybe I just wanted you to feel even a fraction of the humiliation I felt when you told me you were going on a date, while I was standing right there. She let out a bitter laugh. So this was all just about revenge? Michael studied her for a moment. No, he said finally. This was about reality. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. You thought you had all the power in this. That you could walk all over me and I'd just take it. But guess what, Jen? You were wrong. She swallowed, her bravado cracking. Michael leaned in, his voice now deadly quiet. Tell me, was it exciting? Was it worth it? Jennifer didn't answer. She just stood there, lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes darting away. Michael exhaled, shaking his head. You wanted something new? Fine. Consider this a preview of what your new life looks like. Men like Brian? They don't stick around when things get messy. But me? I was there for you through everything. Her expression flickered, just for a second. Michael smirked, taking a step back. But hey, don't let me stop you. You're free now, Jen. You got what you wanted. He gestured toward the empty sidewalk where Brian had disappeared. So go after him. Jennifer clenched her jaw, but she didn't move. Michael chuckled under his breath. That's what I thought. Without another word, he turned on his heel and walked away, leaving her standing there alone in the cold night air. And for the first time, it wasn't his loss. It was hers. Michael walked away, his heartbeat steady, his mind clear. The night air was cool against his skin, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he wasn't the one left standing in disbelief. Jennifer didn't call after him. She didn't try to stop him. And that silence? That was the sweetest victory of all. As he reached his car, he hesitated, just for a moment. A part of him had expected her to chase him down, to demand he come back, to argue more, because that's who she was. Stubborn. Always needing the last word. But tonight she had none. He slid into the driver's seat, gripping the wheel, exhaling slowly. The adrenaline was still coursing through his veins, but beneath it, something else lingered, something heavier. 10 years. 10 years of marriage, of memories, of believing he had a partner in life. And now, what did he have? A woman who had openly admitted she wanted something more. A woman who had expected him to sit back and watch while she went out with another man. His jaw clenched. No. Not anymore. He started the car, the engine purring beneath him, a steady contrast to the chaos of the night. But just as he put it in drive, his phone buzzed on the dashboard. Jennifer. Michael let it ring. Once. Twice. Then silence. Seconds later, a message appeared. Jennifer, are you really just going to leave? He smirked, shaking his head. Now she cares? The phone buzzed again. Jennifer, we need to talk. Michael stared at the screen, considering his options. He could ignore her. He could drive away and let her sit with the consequences of her choices. Or he could answer, give her a taste of what she really asked for. Instead, he typed out a simple reply. Michael, you had your chance to talk. You wasted it. Then, without waiting for a response, he put his phone on silent and pulled out onto the road. Let her be the one waiting this time. Michael drove in silence, the city lights flashing past his window, but his mind was locked on one thing, Jennifer's texts. We need to talk. Funny how suddenly she cared about talking, now that things weren't going her way. For the first time in this whole mess, Michael felt something different, control. She had expected him to sit at home, miserable, while she played out her little fantasy with Brian. Instead, she had been the one left humiliated. And now, she was the one chasing him. He pulled into the driveway of their house, but for the first time in years, it didn't feel like home. Not anymore. Michael sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel, the weight of everything finally settling in. Did he even want to fix this? Before he could answer his own question, headlights cut through the darkness. A car pulled up behind him, and he didn't even have to turn around to know who it was. Jennifer. She stepped out quickly, slamming the door shut, her heels clicking against the pavement as she hurried toward him. Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. Here we go. She reached the driver's side window, knocking once. He didn't roll it down immediately. Let her wait. Let her feel what it was like to be ignored. Finally, he exhaled and lowered the window. You really shouldn't be driving while upset, Jen. Her arms were crossed, her eyes still blazing with frustration, but now, there was something else beneath it. A crack in her confidence. We need to talk, she repeated. Michael shrugged. You already said that. But the thing is, I don't think we do need to talk. Her jaw tightened. Michael, don't play games. He smirked. Oh, now you don't like games? She let out an exasperated sigh. You embarrass me. Michael scoffed. No, Jen. You embarrass yourself. I just made sure you got to see it happen in real time. She opened her mouth, then shut it. She wasn't used to this. She wasn't used to him being the one in control. Finally, her voice softened, losing some of its bite. I didn't think it would go like this. Michael nodded. Yeah, I bet you didn't. He leaned against the headrest, studying her. So tell me, Jen. Now that Brian's gone, what exactly do you want from me? She hesitated. That hesitation told him everything. Jennifer had wanted the best of both worlds, a safe, stable husband waiting at home while she ran around chasing excitement. Not anymore. Michael let the silence stretch before finally speaking again. You said our marriage was boring. That you needed something more. He tilted his head. So why are you here instead of with him? She exhaled, looking away, arms tightening around herself. Because? I don't know. Michael let out a humorless chuckle. Not good enough, Jen. She swallowed, looking at him, really looking at him, for the first time in a long time. And for once, she wasn't the one with the upper hand. Michael held her gaze for a moment longer before shaking his head. I think I'm done talking for tonight. Then, without waiting for her response, he rolled up the window, grabbed his keys, and walked inside, leaving her standing in the driveway. Let her feel it. Let her wonder what happens next. This time, he was in control. Michael didn't turn back. He didn't give Jennifer a second glance as he stepped into the house, locking the door behind him. He stood in the hallway for a moment, his breathing steady. He had expected her to chase after him, to hammer on the door, to scream and demand he let her in. But the only thing that followed was silence. Good. Let her sit with it. Michael moved through the house, but everything felt different. The pictures on the walls, the familiar scent of Jennifer's perfume lingering in the air, it all felt like echoes of something that didn't exist anymore. He sat down on the couch, running a hand over his face. His phone buzzed again. Jennifer, I'm still outside. He smirked. Let her wait. Minutes passed. Then more. Another message came in. Jennifer, are you really just going to ignore me? He stared at the screen, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. Michael, yeah? I am. Then he put his phone on the coffee table and leaned back. He wasn't playing her game anymore. After about 20 minutes he heard her car engine start. A few seconds later she was gone. Michael exhaled, closing his eyes. For the first time since she had blindsided him with her confession, he felt something close to peace. But it wasn't over. Not yet. The next morning, he woke up feeling different. Not broken. Not lost. Just free. No desperate need to fix things. No urge to chase after Jennifer and beg for answers. If anything, he was starting to see things clearly for the first time in years. As he got out of bed and headed into the kitchen, his phone buzzed again. Jennifer. He let it ring. Then another text. Jennifer, we need to talk. Please. Michael took a sip of his coffee, watching as the notification faded from his screen. She wasn't used to this, to being the one left waiting, the one unsure of where she stood. And he wasn't in a hurry to give her any clarity. This time, she could wonder what happened next. Michael spent the morning in complete silence, sipping his coffee and staring out the window. No chaos. No shouting. No desperate attempts to understand why the woman he had built a life with had so easily thrown it away. His phone vibrated again on the table. Jennifer, please, Michael. Just talk to me. He smirked. She wasn't used to this. For years, she had been the one dictating how things went in their marriage. If they argued, he was always the first to reach out. If she was upset, he was always the one to smooth things over. If she needed space, he gave it. Not this time. This time, she could feel what it was like to be ignored. To sit with the weight of uncertainty. Michael finished his coffee, set the mug in the sink, and grabbed his keys. The drive felt different today. Lighter. He hadn't realized how much mental space Jennifer had taken up in his life, how much energy he had spent keeping their marriage together while she had already checked out. He parked outside a cafe, deciding to take his time, enjoy a quiet morning for himself. As he sat down with a fresh cup of coffee, his phone buzzed again. Jennifer, I'm coming over. Michael chuckled under his breath. Of course she was. Let her come. An hour later, when he pulled back into the driveway, her car was already parked outside. Jennifer was leaning against the hood, arms crossed, eyes filled with frustration. Michael took his time getting out of the car. Morning, he said casually. Her jaw tightened. Are you really going to keep ignoring me? He smirked. Didn't seem to bother you much when you were making your plans with Brian. Jennifer exhaled sharply, rubbing her temples. Okay, I deserve that. Michael leaned against his car, arms crossed. So, what do you want, Jen? She hesitated. That hesitation was everything. She faltered, her usual confidence nowhere to be found. I need to explain. He raised an eyebrow. Explain what? That you decided our marriage was boring? That you wanted something more? Her lips pressed into a thin line. It's not that simple. Michael chuckled, shaking his head. Oh, it's very simple. You just didn't expect to lose control of the situation. She swallowed hard. Michael, please. Just let me talk. He tilted his head, studying her. For the first time in years, she was the one asking for his time. For the first time, he had the power. He let the silence stretch, watching her squirm, before finally shrugging. All right, Jen. Talk. But she was about to learn something very important. Just because he was listening didn't mean he was forgiving. Jennifer exhaled, her fingers gripping the edge of her jacket as if holding on to her last bit of confidence. Michael, I never meant for it to happen like this. Michael leaned against his car, arms crossed. Oh? How did you mean for it to happen, Jen? Walk me through your plan. She hesitated, clearly thrown off by his calmness. She had expected anger, maybe even desperation. But instead, he was composed. In control. She ran a hand through her hair, sighing. I got caught up in something. I felt like we were stuck in a routine. Like I wasn't living anymore. Michael let out a dry chuckle. So, instead of talking to me about it, you decided to cheat. Her eyes snapped to his. I wasn't cheating, Michael. He arched a brow. Oh? You were going on a date with another man. That's cheating, Jen. Jennifer groaned, looking away. I was honest about it. I told you before I did anything. Michael let out a slow breath, shaking his head. And you think that makes it better? He stepped closer, his voice dropping lower. You didn't tell me because you respected me. You told me because you thought I'd be too weak to stop you. Jennifer flinched. Michael continued, his voice unwavering. You wanted me to sit at home like a fool, waiting while you played around with Brian. You thought you had all the power in this, that I'd just take whatever you threw at me. Her arms wrapped around herself. I wasn't trying to hurt you. Michael let out a sharp laugh. Jen, if you weren't trying to hurt me, then what exactly were you trying to do? Silence. Jennifer shifted on her feet, her lips parting slightly before closing again. For the first time, she looked truly lost. Michael tilted his head. Tell me something. His tone was cold, detached. If I hadn't crashed your little date, would you have slept with him? Jennifer's breath hitched. Michael! Answer me. She looked down, her fingers gripping the sleeves of her jacket. I don't know, she admitted quietly. Michael chuckled, but there was no humor in it. Wow. You don't know. Jennifer swallowed hard. I wasn't thinking that far ahead. I like the attention, okay? Michael studied her for a long moment. There it is, he said finally. The truth. She looked up at him, her eyes pleading. Michael, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I don't want to lose us. Michael exhaled, letting her words hang between them. A few days ago, that might have meant something. He might have fought for her, tried to fix things. But now, he wasn't so sure he wanted her anymore. And for the first time, she was the one afraid of being left behind. Jennifer's eyes searched Michael's face, desperate for some sign that he still cared, that he was still the man who would do anything to keep their marriage together. But Michael wasn't that man anymore. He let out a slow exhale, shaking his head. You don't want to lose us? His voice was eerily calm. Jen, you already lost us. The second you decided that what we had wasn't enough. She flinched, her arms tightening around herself. It wasn't like that. Michael scoffed. Really? Then explain it to me, because from where I'm standing, it was exactly like that. Jennifer took a shaky breath. I got caught up in the excitement. I like feeling wanted, feeling desired. I didn't mean to hurt you, Michael. I swear. Michael studied her, his expression unreadable. You like feeling wanted. He let the words sink in before shaking his head. That's rich, Jen. Because for 10 years I wanted you. I loved you. And instead of appreciating that, you threw it away for some cheap thrill. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Michael took a step closer, his voice lowering. Tell me something. If Brian hadn't backed out, if I hadn't shown up, would you still be here, begging me to fix this? Jennifer swallowed hard, shifting uncomfortably. Michael, would you? His voice was sharper now, cutting through the air between them. She hesitated. That hesitation told him everything. Michael let out a cold chuckle. That's what I thought. Jennifer reached for him, her fingers grazing his arm. I don't want to lose you, Michael. Please, can we just talk this through? He pulled back. Not harshly, not angrily, just firmly. No, Jen. He shook his head, his voice steady. I'm done talking. Jennifer's face crumbled, panic flickering in her eyes. So that's it? You're just going to throw everything away? Michael laughed under his breath, but there was no humor in it. No, Jen. You threw everything away. I'm just finally walking away from the wreckage. Tears welled in her eyes, but Michael didn't feel sympathy, not anymore. He had spent years putting her first, making sure she was happy, believing they were a team. But the truth was, Jennifer had been looking for something more, and in doing so, she had lost the best thing she already had. Michael exhaled, shaking his head. You made your choice, Jen. Now I'm making mine. And with that, he turned and walked away. For the first time, he was the one leaving. And for the first time, she was the one left standing in the ruins of what she had destroyed. Michael didn't look back. He heard Jennifer's sharp inhale, the way her breath hitched like she was about to call his name, but she didn't. He stepped inside the house, shutting the door behind him. The lock clicked into place, a sound that felt final. For a long moment he just stood there, staring at the familiar walls, the furniture they had picked out together, the framed pictures that now felt like artifacts from another life. His phone buzzed again. Jennifer, Michael, please, just talk to me. He let out a slow exhale, his fingers hovering over the screen. Then, without responding, he set the phone down. He wasn't playing this game anymore. The next few days passed in a blur. Jennifer kept texting, calling. Every message carried a different tone, first pleading, then apologetic, then angry when he didn't reply. Jennifer, I don't deserve this kind of treatment, Michael. Jennifer, you can't just shut me out like this. Jennifer, fine. If you're done, just say it. Michael didn't answer any of them. Instead, he focused on himself for the first time in years. He went to the gym after work, something he had neglected for too long. He met up with old friends, people he had lost touch with because his world had revolved around keeping Jennifer happy. And little by little, he started to feel free. It was on the fourth day that she showed up at the house. Michael had just finished dinner when he heard the knock at the door. Slow. Hesitant. He already knew who it was. For a brief moment, he considered ignoring it. But then, he exhaled and walked over, opening the door. Jennifer stood there, her eyes tired, her posture tense. She looked different. The confidence she had wielded like a weapon was gone. Michael! She breathed, as if relieved that he had actually answered. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Jen! She swallowed hard, looking at him like she was searching for some crack in his armor. I needed to see you. Michael tilted his head. Why? She let out a shaky breath. Because I can't stand this. You ignoring me. Acting like I don't exist. He studied her, his expression unreadable. How does it feel? Jennifer flinched. Michael, please. I messed up, I know I did. But I don't want to lose you. I don't want to throw away what we have. Michael let out a slow, humorless chuckle. You already did, Jen. The moment you decided I wasn't enough for you. Tears welled in her eyes. I was wrong. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah. You were. Silence stretched between them. Jennifer looked like she was waiting for him to offer her some kind of lifeline, something to hold on to. But he didn't. Instead, he met her gaze, his voice steady. And now you have to live with that. Her breath hitched. Michael. But he was done. He nodded toward the street. Go home, Jennifer. She didn't move at first, as if expecting him to take it back. But when he didn't, she finally stepped back, her shoulders slumping. I'm sorry, she whispered. Michael exhaled. I know. Then, without another word, he closed the door. And this time, it really was over. The door clicked shut, sealing Jennifer out, not just from the house, but from his life. Michael stood there for a moment, listening. He half expected her to knock again, to plead, to demand another conversation. But there was only silence. Then, after a few moments, the faint sound of footsteps retreating down the driveway. She was gone. Michael exhaled slowly, running a hand over his face. It was over. Really, truly over. And instead of the crushing pain he had expected to feel, all he felt was relief. For years, he had made excuses for Jennifer. Justified her selfishness. Bent over backward to keep their marriage intact while she had slowly chipped away at it. And now, for the first time, he wasn't fighting for something that wasn't worth saving. That night, Michael slept better than he had in weeks. No more restless tossing and turning. No more staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every sign he had ignored. When he woke up, the weight that had been pressing down on his chest was gone. Jennifer hadn't texted. No calls. No messages. She had finally accepted what she had lost. And now, it was time for him to move forward. Over the next few weeks, Michael rebuilt himself. He focused on his career, put in extra hours at work, not because he needed to, but because he wanted to. He started going to the gym regularly, pushing himself harder every time. And for the first time in a long time, he lived for himself. There were moments when he thought about her, of course. A decade of memories didn't just disappear overnight. But every time he did, he reminded himself of who Jennifer really was, not the woman he had fallen in love with, but the woman who had told him, to his face, that she was going on a date with another man. And every time, it made it easier to let her go. One evening, he was sitting at a bar with a few coworkers when a woman slid into the seat next to him. Is this taken? She asked, flashing a smile. Michael glanced at her, bright eyes, confident, the kind of woman who knew what she wanted. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel the sting of betrayal when he thought about starting over. He smiled back. Not at all. Jennifer had wanted something more. So had he. And now, he was finally ready to find it. Michael hadn't expected to meet someone so soon. He had told himself he would take his time, focus on himself, heal from the wreckage of his marriage before even considering the idea of moving on. But as he sat there, talking to the woman beside him, Emily, she had introduced herself, he realized something. Moving on didn't mean rushing into something new. It didn't mean trying to replace Jennifer overnight. It simply meant allowing himself to be open to the possibility of happiness again. So, what brings you out tonight? Emily asked, sipping her drink. Michael smirked. Just enjoying life. She raised an eyebrow playfully. That sounds like something people say when they're trying not to answer a question. He chuckled. All right, you got me. Let's just say I'm making up for lost time. Emily tilted her head, studying him. Messy breakup? Michael hesitated for a second before nodding. Something like that. Emily didn't push, didn't ask for details. She just smiled, as if she understood. Well, if it helps, you don't look like a guy who lost something. You look like someone who finally figured out what he deserves. Michael let that sink in. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't defined by his past. By Jennifer. By the hurt she had caused him. He was free. He lifted his glass. To figuring out what we deserve. Emily clinked her glass against his, a smirk playing on her lips. I'll drink to that. And just like that, Michael realized, Jennifer's betrayal wasn't the end of his story. It was just the beginning of something better. Michael stepped out of the bar, the night air crisp against his skin. He felt lighter than he had in years. No more anger. No more bitterness weighing him down. Just a quiet certainty that his life was finally his own again. Emily had given him her number before she left, scribbled onto a napkin with a playful smirk. Call me when you're ready, she had said. And for the first time in a long time, he got to decide what came next. Michael walked toward his car, hands in his pockets, his mind clear. His phone buzzed. He glanced down. Jennifer. For a moment, he just stared at the screen, waiting for the usual rush of emotion, anger, sadness, longing. But it never came. Instead, all he felt was indifference. He let the call ring out. No need to block her, no need for a dramatic final message. He didn't owe her anything. He got into his car, tossing his phone onto the passenger seat. Jennifer had thought she could break him. That she could toy with his heart, chase excitement, and still have him waiting for her at the end of it all. But she had underestimated him. Michael pulled out onto the road, the streetlights flickering past. She had wanted more. And now, so did he. Only this time, he would find it without her. For the first time in 10 years, he was finally, truly free.